Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh, Stomping Jen.
Oh, hi.
Welcome to the Soft Serve podcast.
I thank you for having me.
I am your co-host, Sawtooth Frank. And on this episode, I'm really excited. We have a real life ghost hunter on our podcast.
A real life one?
Yes, we have...
Is it a ghost?
An individual known only as Spirit Hunter from Berkshire Ghost Detectives to talk to us all about ghost hunting.
Interesting.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's talk to them on the other side of the music. The Soft Serve Podcast. Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Okay, Stomping Jen.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Sawtooth Frank.
On our phone,
Yeah.
we have Spirit Hunter
Spirit Hunter.
from Berkshire Ghost Detectives. Hello, Spirit Hunter.
Well, hello. How are you this evening?
Thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm pleased to be here.
I've been looking forward to talking to you actually for quite some time since we booked you. I have an ongoing interest in the paranormal and the supernatural, so when you agreed to do this podcast, I was naturally quite excited. Listeners of our podcast will know that at the end of every episode, we ask our guests, have you ever seen something you can't explain? And I'm not going to ask you that question, Spirit Hunter, at the end of this podcast.
We're going to ask you at the beginning?
We have a whole lot of questions about things maybe that Spirit Hunter has seen that he can't explain. So, Spirit Hunter, I think first and foremost, just tell us a little bit about yourself and Berkshire Ghost Detectives.
Well, it all started about 15 years ago. I was in doing a night of astronomy up at the Aruna Hill Natural Science Center. And we started hearing this. It was a small group of astronomers. We started hearing this strange rustling out in the woods. And it's been known that a spirit out there by the name of Aruna Bartlett, one of the previous owners of the property, is known to enchant the forest out there. And we kept hearing this noise off in the woods, and we found that it was getting closer, and we started actually seeing a visual disturbance down below us in the woods.
Okay.
There's a big clearing that we observed from, and this image,
yes,
kept moving closer and closer to us, and it was very it was tumbling and
writhing and tumbling.
Yeah, and we couldn't understand what was going on, and we being astronomers, we have red lights because we don't want to disturb our eyes while
Right.
we're looking at the sky. So we started training some of our lights on it, and we found out that it was simply a plastic bag tumbling in the wind. It was very disappointing.
Huh.
But
But
it got me thinking about
right.
the other side.
So this opened up this incident out there in the woods at the observatory opened up your mind to the possibility of paranormal activity, perhaps, and that's how you. That's what I'm hearing is that's how you got started with Berkshire Ghost Detectives. Did you form the organization shortly after this incident?
Yes, we formed an LLC.
So, seeing that plastic bag got you interested in the paranormal, and I think from what I'm hearing, it opened up in your mind the possibility that there might be something out there, and that's why you decided to start the Berkshire Ghost Detectives. Is that what I'm hearing, Spirit Hunter?
Well, yes. I gathered a few other people together who were interested in forming this little association, and we started doing small investigations. We did start with the Aruna Bartlett individual,
Yeah.
who was a very well-known figure back in the 1860s in Mass.
Okay. Now, did this Anna Bartlett character die in some kind of peculiar circumstance or tragic kind of circumstance?
The proper name is Aruna.
Oh,
with
Aruna.
an H at the end.
Okay.
He had a lot of connections with some of the local scientists in the area, and also a connection, oddly enough, with the University of Massachusetts. As it
Interesting.
in its
Is
early
that like the Bartlett
formative
dorm?
Oh, there is
Yeah.
I live there.
there is a dorm at UMass Amherst called Bartlett, and I wonder if it's named after this Aruna Bartlett.
So the family does have a large and wide existence in the whole valley. There's also connections with his family to the very first chancellor of UMass, which is also he was. I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name. You've caught me kind of off guard.
Yeah, don't worry
They
about. Yeah,
they also cousins of the University of Massachusetts first president, or not president, chancellor, also made telescopes uh, um, in the valley, in of all places, Ashfield, Massachusetts. So there's a lot of interesting history going on in then their hills of the Berkshires.
yeah, and it is interesting. Ghosts, tend to be linked to this kind of local history, which is, I think, why you and your teammates there who were at the observatory, when you saw that bag, maybe thought it could be the ghost of Aruna Bartlett. Now, nowadays, how do you decide what you're going to investigate in terms of paranormal activity?
Well, they'll usually come in through either email or some form of communications, a telephone call, and we do an initial interview.
Yes.
To see if it's something that sounds like it would be interesting to investigate.
Yeah. Are there particular inquiries that are of interest to you, or one more than the other? Like, would you be more interested in a poltergeist type of scenario versus a demonic possession?
Seances,
Oh.
we find are very good ways of connecting to the dead. on the other side.
Yeah. And so it seems like people do invite you into their homes to investigate. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes it's abandoned houses that we investigate as well.
Now, when people, are you ever asked to come and investigate a home where there are people living in and occupying the residence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the spirits do get a bit restless, so we have to.
And what kind of activity do these people report? And they're asking you to come investigate. Plates moving around, cats bleeding from the eyes. What kind of stuff?
Sometimes mirrors breaking.
Mm-hmm.
We hear movements in the night, doors slamming, screams.
Doors slamming
sometimes.
That's a classic. That's a classic paranormal observance, isn't it? Stomping Jen, slamming doors. Yeah. So now
I have to ask you a question.
Please.
Have you had experience with this kind of slamming of doors?
No, not door slamming. I've told this story on the podcast a couple of times in various contexts. I believe I did see two ghosts when I was a child. A ghost of an old woman standing in my driveway, and I believe I also saw the ghost of a cat, a recently deceased cat. Now, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, and I don't think we had paranormal investigators back then in the 70s, and if we did, my parents weren't aware of them, so we didn't have anybody come and investigate these incidents. Now, when you're doing an investigation, you've got the email, and it's something that interests you. It sounds like you're more interested in the kind of what we all think of as standard ghost activity and seances. Do you have a bag of tools that you go and investigate with? What do you use to look into this activity?
Well, we have several different types of metering devices, electrostatic meters and magnetometers that we can bring in, and we check the premises to see if there's any initial disturbances, hotspots within the realm of the house.
I've heard of these. I think they're called EMF detectors. Yeah. Am I right about that?
That would be one form of them. Yeah.
And now, from what I understand,
we also have recording devices that will go beyond the normal range of audio into the spiritual range. That we can sometimes pick up the whisperings and voices of the unalive, call it.
So that's interesting. I'll ask you a little bit more about this later. But with this equipment, you can detect the presence of the ghost or spirit or whatever it is using electromagnetic frequencies. But you can also record the voices of these entities?
Yes. So it has a particular filtering device. What would normally sound like white noise to us, or background hums in the house, or maybe a rainstorm outside, will actually generate. Once you filter and pull apart the audio track, you can actually pick up the spirit world.
What kind of stuff do they say? Like, I imagine they might be saying stuff, I mean, like, where am I? Or, Stomping Jen. What would you imagine a ghost would say? I don't know. Get out?
Sometimes they're as confused as the people that are living in the house. So they're living on a different plane, and they're not understanding fully what has happened to them.
So they're maybe confused or scared in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Like, I mean, that's understandable.
All I can think about is Beetlejuice,
You,
the
what?
handbook for the recently deceased.
Oh, what did that say? What did the movie say about it? Oh, you don't remember? Well, no. The reason I'm asking is I think these, stories and tales. Beetlejuice is just a modern story or tale, right? Often contain elements of real world types of events and narratives. So I could imagine that something out of this realm that Spirit Hunter has so much experience in with his Berkshire Ghost Detectives, knowledge from that could make it into a movie or like Beetlejuice or another story. That's why I'm asking if you remember what was in the handbook. Now, Spirit Hunter. Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes it's as simple as people wanting to make contact with some past members of their family. Something as simple as, you passed away the other night and we can't find the keys to the car.
Huh. I wish I had a ghost around to tell me where the keys to the car were. I lose them every other day. Are you ever? How does it feel hearing the voice of the dead? That must be disturbing.
It all depends on if it's an agitated spirit or one that is just in the house and existing.
Yeah.
And not particularly upset with anything.
Okay. All right. So we've covered sound recording devices. We talked about the electromagnetic frequency meters, which those are devices that indicate maybe the presence of a spirit without recording it. Now, I've seen in various shows that I've watched and my research on the internet that some ghost detectives use infrared cameras to actually record like the physical embodiment of a spirit. Have you ever used anything like that?
Yes, what we'll typically do is set up a bunch of wireless cameras throughout the house, and we'll just start. They hook up to their local area network in the house, and then we can monitor them remotely and do overnight recordings and whatnot, and see if we have any kind of hits through the night.
Now, have you recorded something on these cameras, these infrared cameras?
Oh, absolutely.
And what do you see? Tell us what you see.
Ranging from strange orb cloud-like figures to very distinct figures. One particular location up in the Stockbridge area.
Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yep.
We actually recorded a gentleman in like a soldier's garb.
Huh.
Like a uniform.
Yeah.
From the Continental Army days.
Wow. Now, that must be something to see these objects. These thinking about the spherical objects you've recorded, but I can only imagine what it must be like to see the infrared, fully formed shape of a human being. That must be terrifying. Yeah.
It depends on what they're what it is that they're displaying.
Yeah.
Are they have they been mischievous in the house? Or are they uh, spirits that want to be part of the living
Right.
family that's living in the house?
Okay.
There's a lot of there's a wide range of varieties of what can happen. Um,
Yeah. You know
I
what? One thing I have to say, what that's really shining through for me here is how much compassion you have for these entities. I mean, a couple of times, you've expressed how these just may be confused or kind of lost type of souls, and I think that's admirable.
I would like to take a few minutes at some point and talk a little bit deeper about the background and history of my entire family, and what kind of got me interested in this kind of activity to begin with.
Yeah, well, let's do that now. What got you interested in this?
Well, many years ago, my back in the 30s, there was a uh, kind of a conglomeration of people in the Lake Pleasant area. I don't know if you're aware of where that is.
Is
It's
that
kind of near,
Massachusetts, Lake Pleasant,
it's near,
Massachusetts?
it's near
Okay.
Turner's Falls
Okay.
on Route 10
Okay.
in 63.
Yep. A very rural area for people
A
who
very
don't know it.
rural area.
Yep.
It's a fairly good sized pond, but they refer to it as a lake. It's really not quite a lake in size.
Okay.
It was a hot spot for people that were connecting to the spirit world, and doing. It was very popular to have seances. Um, there was just a lot of people um, that lived there, that it became known to be that kind of presence. And so people were flocking in and actually purchasing properties. And it became an area that if you wanted to make contact with a dead relative or wanted to engage with the spirit world, it was very well known
Hmm.
to go to Lake Pleasant. Well, my mother, as a child, just happened to live in Lake Pleasant. That's where her mom had purchased a house. They weren't particularly into that kind of thing themselves,
Okay.
but it was just a happenstance that was going on there. And my mother was actually, over the years, experienced quite a few seances. And I wish she was still alive, that we could talk to her now about it. And she used to relate to us as kids some of the experiences that she had making contact
Now,
with.
do you think your mother's experiences with seances in the Lake Pleasant area have led to kind of your interest now in
Yes, yeah,
seances?
it was definitely a driving force. That it was always quite interesting to hear her stories and meet some of her old friends that also had experienced some of these seances with her.
Hmm.
Um, um, there was it was a very interesting situation that went on there from the 30s into the 60s, and then the whole Lake Pleasant area kind of started dying off a little bit. People moving away, and but the heyday was basically in the late 30s, early 40s, of that kind of activity at Lake Pleasant, and it's still very well known for that history
Hmm.
out there. Um, it's and if you drive around the Lake Pleasant area, you kind of get a feeling that there's something going on there. There's something happening there.
Do you think, what do you attribute this geographical area's kind of ability to channel these forces? Do you think there could be some kind of like crystal deposit beneath the lake, or is something maybe about the water?
I think it's more of a lot of the areas in Massachusetts and in the Berkshires and this Western Mass area here used to contain a lot of industries, and there was a lot of life up in the hill towns, and they were actually much more bustling back then than they are now. And I think there's, as these little towns, as the industry, the mill towns died off, people started moving out. There was just a lot of unsettled business with the spirit worlds up there.
Yeah,
and you can go up and see many sites that are abandoned and have a lot of stories to tell. And there's just a lot of history. And I think the spirits are, in some cases, trapped in that history.
He knows a shit ton of history about the valley.
Spirit Hunter has lived here all his life, and this is what he does with Berkshire Ghost Detectives. This is his passion. So the question that I have for you, Spirit Hunter, I want to zero in on these seances for a second.
My mother was caught up in some weird shit when she was a kid.
I really want to drill in a little bit more on these seances, especially with the connection to your mother, Spirit Hunter. Do these typically involve Ouija boards, or is it something like people sitting in a circle holding hands?
So the whole Lake Pleasant piece of history, it was as I said earlier, a conglomeration of different people using different methods, and some were Ouija boards, some were your typical seance, and quite honestly, there were some that were shams. That my mother had seen. But some of the things like let's go into the Ouija board. The Ouija boards tend to bring negative presence from the spirit world for some reason. The Ouija is the dark side. A lot of people do not care to go into that realm.
It's funny you mention that. I have a Ouija board sitting in my basement, and I was given it by my mother a few years before she got ill and passed away. Now, she handed it to me. It's in kind of some kind of cloth bag. I don't know exactly what the bag is made of, but the case itself is some kind of leather material. And what she told me was, I'm giving this to you. I'm entrusting you with this. I don't want you to ever use it. And Spirit Hunter, this goes directly to what you said. I asked her why. She said, only bad things will happen if you use it. And the planchette, which is the little thing that you move around, she told me that the planchette was carved from the hip bone of a rabid fox that bit her younger brother and killed him.
Well,
I can't. Sorry. She said it killed her younger brother, and her father, in a desperate move, grabbed the fox by its neck. It strangled it and cut it open right on their dining room table. And he ripped out its hip bone. And they took the blood from the hip bone and they made the cross of the Virgin Mary on the body of her dead brother. Oh. She told me never to use the Ouija board.
I've heard. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of this kind of nature.
Oh, God. It's been sitting in my basement now for 17 years. I've been afraid to use it. But sorry, I get emotional when I talk about it, but I'm telling you, I sometimes get an urge to go down there and open it up. Anyways, do you hear similar stories about these Ouija board, Spirit Hunter?
What we find is that kind of negative energy is very, very common with Ouija board. And most people will refuse to use the Ouija board.
Should I get rid of it? Do you think I should get rid of it?
Well,
and how would I dispose of such a thing?
That's what I'm thinking. Is very hard to dispose, and you know, if somebody else runs onto it, or if you throw it away and it gets pulled from the trash, you would be responsible for unleashing that to another generation.
So what do I don't know what to do. I'm just going to leave it down there. I'm not going to touch it. It doesn't seem, it seems to be powerless down there. It's not, I don't know. All right. I'm going to move on.
I think we should move on.
Okay. Yes. So after your 15 years of doing these paranormal investigations through Berkshire Ghost Detectives, what do you think ghosts are?
I think they're people that have not, in some cases, passed through to the other side. They're kind of stuck in limbo in some cases, looking for answers themselves as to what has become of them. In other cases, they are people who are trying to tell a loved one a message of some sort, and in other cases, they are just troubled individuals that are not understanding what's happening to them.
And so after 15 years, do you think they're real? After doing these investigations for 15 years, do you think they're real?
I most definitely do. I do think there is an afterlife for these creatures, these people that have turned into the spirit world, and they're just really looking, in many cases, for answers themselves.
Now,
and
what does that mean for us and our existence in this universe?
Well, it's again one of those questions that can we as human beings really answer that question? One thing that's always fascinated me is how everybody is living on their own timeline.
That's right.
And we all intersect with each other's timelines.
Now, I'm going to interrupt real quick just to say Space Unicorn has come into the studio, and she's listening intently to this conversation. I want to ask her, Spirit Hunter, real quick. Space Unicorn, do you want to say anything about ghosts and what you think about them?
They're probably from a different dimension.
Talk into the microphone, please.
I'm convinced they're from a different dimension with a link to ours.
Okay, so you think they're real, Space Unicorn?
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking to a professional ghost hunter named Spirit Hunter. Okay. Now, Space Unicorn, do you think ghosts are good, or do you think they're neutral, or do you think they're bad? Do you have any thoughts on this?
They're probably neutral.
Neutral?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
In many cases, they are.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your thoughts, Space Unicorn.
Don't mention it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've heard a younger person's perspective on that Spirit Hunter.
So I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
What are your thoughts on reincarnation?
My thoughts on reincarnation. Oh boy. I oscillate between varying levels of belief and acceptance across a realm of theories about existence. I sometimes think that there is no afterlife, right? That we are just purely these biological creatures born into this singular universe. We live, we die. There's nothing before, there's nothing after. I sometimes also, partly based on my own experiences, believe that there is something more, something deeper. Knowing that we occupy a multi-dimensional sphere, some of the dimensions of which we can't even see, right? And multiverses that we can't even access. And to me, that suggests maybe there are possibilities around what happens with the energy of our consciousness or the energy of our being. I don't know. And I also sometimes accept and believe in the simulation hypothesis that we're living in a simulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a simulated existence, I think it would be entirely possible that there's something like an afterlife, and maybe even an afterlife just for selected people in a simulation. I think so. I understand and hold all of these possibilities about existence, and I like I said, I oscillate back and forth between believing in them. So I'm nowhere specific, Spirit Hunter.
So one of the members of my team that has since passed on, her name was Phyllis Rhoden. She was a very popular individual in the Northampton area back in the 80s. And at that point, she was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. She lived to be almost 100. She passed away not terribly long ago. She was probably like in her early 70s. She was a student. She was a late to learning college education. But in either case, she was a part of our team, and what she would do is she had the ability to do readings on people, and she could actually pull out past lives and tell you some of your past lives. Well, one day she did a reading on me.
Okay.
I was part of the at one point I was part of the Roman Empire, and was one of the oh gosh, what do you call it? Part of the army.
Oh,
the Roman
Centurion.
And I actually died in a fight, and also in one of the lives that she was able to pull out, I was a World War II flyer, and my life ended over Germany. I was shot down,
and now you are an investigator of the paranormal.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, you said she was a member of your team. I could imagine it was valuable to have somebody like that on your team with that skill set. I could imagine that they were useful in investigating paranormal situations. How has the team been functioning without her?
Well, it's definitely a hole.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't found anybody that fills that particular expertise yet.
Yeah.
But she was really quite a fascinating woman.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask Stomping Jen, Spirit Hunter. You asked me the question. Stomping Jen, hearing from Spirit Hunter here that he's investigated ghosts and paranormal entities. He believes that they're real based on what he's seen and experienced. What do you think this says about our existence and the afterlife? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm not sold.
No. So
I'm a skeptic.
Are you in the we live when we die kind of camp?
Yeah.
So Stomping Jen,
Yes.
do you ever experience deja vu?
Not really.
Oh, I do all the time, Spirit Hunter.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that's because we are multiphasically, our consciousnesses are multiphasically shifting, right? Because we know there is no real past, present, or future, right? I mean, time is just a function of space and gravity, right? And so I think it's our consciousness multi-phase shifting across space-time, and we're experiencing and living all of our experiences simultaneously. That's what I think deja vu is.
Like Arrival.
It is kind of like Arrival, the movie. Have you seen that, Spirit Hunter?
Yes,
yeah,
I have. Yes.
I believe that is what the phenomenon of deja vu is, 100%. Good for you, Stomping Jen.
For what?
Making that connection.
With the movie?
Yeah. Go ahead, Spirit Hunter, please.
So, one other thing that has always fascinated me is the connection to the universe. Are there extraterrestrials? Have they visited? Have they left their marks? Are they currently with us?
What do you think about that, Spirit Hunter?
I'm kind of all over the place with it. I do believe there's life and existence on other planets. I do believe that the life that is on this planet was probably a deposit, an experiment of some sort by extraterrestrials.
Or a deposit.
I don't disagree with you, actually.
Yeah, I think I think we're nothing more than an experiment.
Yeah, and I won't go too far in this because we're going to do a UFO episode of the Soft Serve podcast, and maybe we'll invite you on here, Spirit Hunter, to talk about this. But there are confirmed phenomena of unidentified objects that our own U.S. government has clearly stated now likely are not from this planet, regularly visiting us. Nobody knows how they fly. Nobody knows where they come from. Nobody knows how they cross interstellar space, really.
So one thing on this subject that I find very interesting is every president that gets elected recently has said, I'm going to look into the UFO phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm going to break it open and report. And soon after they get into becoming the president, you never hear them talk about that.
And I think I know why. I mean, it's not that interesting. I think it is no more. I think we, as a species, don't know much more than these unidentified objects exist. They exhibit flight characteristics. unknown to non-propulsive flight characteristics, unknown to anything on our planet.
Or they're shutting the presidents down and saying, no, we can't do that, and this is why. And once the presidents are told the real story, they go, oh.
That's possible. That's possible too. But I think it's because we don't know much, and the information is basically out there already. That's my guess.
The truth is out there. Is that what you're saying?
I do, Stomping Jen. It is out there. Now, let's just circle us back to the paranormal, if we can, real quick.
Yeah. Yes.
So, where do you fall on investigating stuff like demons and poltergeists, more malevolent, bad-intentioned entities? I'm sure you've encountered them.
I've never seen anything of that level. It's usually, recording some voices. I've never heard. I personally have never heard of real malevolent spirits that need to be exorcised. We have not gotten into exorcisms.
Right.
It's more just in investigating.
Okay. Do you have a process, if you did, or have you thought about this, if you did encounter something like a demon, you thought it was a demon, do you have a Rolodex of priests or Pentecostal ministers you would contact, something like that? Is there a handoff process within the paranormal community for evil spirit management, for lack of a better term?
Yes, we have several contacts that we do pass these kinds of problem situations that would be beyond our abilities.
Yeah, because I'd imagine the last thing you'd want to do, for a family in distress would be to walk away and say, we can't help you. At least you want to be able to say, well, here's somebody who can come in here with a cross and a bottle of holy water and take care of this thing for you. Here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's good to know. That was something I was wondering about. Now, in the course of your investigations, has a ghost or other paranormal entity directly interacted with you in some way, Spirit Hunter?
Yes, we were one time investigating on an old rail system. There was a reoccurring specter that was happening. Engineers were, as they were traveling down the tracks in West Deerfield, would see what they thought was a person jumping into the train path. And there was a couple of series of locking up of brakes and doing investigations and finding the body. But they really felt like something had happened. So we did a series of ventures with the B&M Railroad, where we actually went along and recorded one of these specters. And we have a fairly decent video of this very translucent specter, but it was definitely a...
Now, how did it interact with you? This is what I'm curious about. So
what we eventually figured out was in 1869 on the Conway rail system, there was a station that was located in West Deerfield.
Okay.
And there was a station keeper who actually was hit by mistake by one of the locomotives coming into the station, into the South Station, they called it.
Yep.
And
That's
we
usually a ticket to the afterworld right there.
we finally deduced that this spirit was through some of the audio recordings and the video that we received of the specter, that we were able to deduce that this was the trapped spirit of this individual, the station keeper.
Were you able to do anything to help it? Was it asking you for assistance?
Well, again, this is one of those things we passed on to
Okay.
one of our
Your associates.
associates, and they were able to deduce and move that person along and solve the issue on the rail system out there.
Now, does the average person walking around out there need to be afraid or cautious about ghosts?
I have personally never run into one that was going to do harm to me. I find that in most cases they are as frightened of us as we are of them. They're looking for answers. They're looking for help. And
God bless you. You know, you're in a. It sounds like you are at least one way to establish that they're there and they may be in need of help. And like we just heard with the, train story, you know, you're able to pass along information to hopefully have helped these stranded entities move along. So, I mean, I just want people to hear how important the work you're doing is for these stranded souls.
so one of the interesting things I did with this case with the railroad was I did a walk-in on the rail itself.
Yeah.
And did a 3-mile walk-in, and I actually found.
Now, was your plan to be hit by a train and go join this spirit? No. Okay.
But what was interesting is finding the remnants of the old South Station, and one of the I'm a very tactile person. I like physical items. I found some old bricks from the station, and looking at pictures, it was definitely a brick from the building was a wood structure, but it had a brick chimney, and I actually brought that back as a bit of a souvenir.
Huh? The wooden chimney?
No, the structure of the building was wood, and the
I see.
chimney.
Okay.
And I was just amazed that 160 years later, there's still pieces of this old building that one can kind of rummage through alongside the tracks.
Now, are you worried at all that these? Now, we've heard you talk about a number of these old places that somehow spirits and ghosts and other entities attach themselves to. Were you worried at all by taking a piece of this old structure you might inadvertently be
the curse of the
or transporting a ghost or something back to your home? Could that, in your mind, is that a risk?
I guess that's a risk, but I'm a person that likes, like I say, I'm a tactile person. It's nice to have a memory of an experience.
Yeah.
And, so far, nothing has come of it.
Now, in your experience, we've heard about Lake Pleasant, we've heard about the rail station, we've heard about some other places you described. Just in your mind, are there types of places that are more prone to attracting ghosts and paranormal entities than others? Are there?
Not that I have found. Okay. One interesting aside is my wife is a self-proclaimed witch, She comes from a long line of witchery. Her grandmother
That's interesting.
used to actually put spells and hexes on people.
I'm wondering, well, we'll have to talk about this after. I'm wondering if maybe she could help me get rid of the rabid fox hip bone Ouija board I have in my basement.
Well, she might actually be kind of interested in helping you with that.
And I have to ask this question. Is she a good witch or a bad witch?
Oh, she's a good witch.
A good witch. Okay.
In fact, her grandmother was such that when she had put hexes down or what, they were in the spirit of helping the individual who was being bullied or traumatized. Something we'll talk about. I would like to talk about further, kind of off the recording.
Sure.
You.
Yeah. We'll I may need to avail myself of your services. And we'll have to talk. We'll have to talk to your wife about maybe how she might be able to help me with that Ouija board. So that would be good. Yeah, let's talk after the podcast. Now, have you ever been scared on an investigation, or is it one of these situations where you have so much confidence that these entities don't mean bad, so you're not scared? What? Tell us about that.
I've never had a negative physical experience where I felt threatened or feared the situation. There's always that moment of weirdness when you haven't figured out what's going on, but much like other sciences, there's always a reason. There's always a moment where of discovery that things start making sense.
Yeah. Now, okay. Now, to the person listening to this who might have a ghost moving dishes around in their cabinets at night, or tipping over their plants, or what have you, what should they do? Should they contact a group like Berkshire Ghost Detectives? Should they?
Yes, I think it's there's make contact with us. We'll come out and do an initial site visit and see what it is you're experiencing and what the best what way forward is to alleviate the situation or allow you to have a greater understanding of what's going on.
Okay. All right. So don't panic, right? People don't need to be afraid of ghosts. That's what I'm hearing. For the most part.
For the most part, yes.
Okay. All right. Now,
as long as you haven't opened up the rift with the Ouija board.
Right. Yep. I'm certainly not going to. I'm not until I speak with your wife. I'm not touching that fucking Ouija board down there in my basement. I don't even want to think about that. Now, what do you, Spirit Hunter? What do you say to the skeptics out there who might think this is all bullshit? Ghosts are bullshit. Demons are bullshit. All of that stuff. What do you say to those people? Now, let me just say one thing. I just want to say, like, I have a friend known to this podcast as Vape Ape. He's a member of the Small Council. He's appeared on some older episodes of the podcast. Now, he says he lives next to a 300-year-old cemetery, and he's never seen a ghost. So he doesn't think they're real. So what do we say to a skeptical person like Vape Ape?
Well, I think that again, it's as you said earlier, that people are living in different levels of dimensions, and some people may never encounter. Others will.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. Stomping Jen. Sorry. Go ahead, please. Spirit Hunter.
No, I'm finished. Does Stomping Jen have something to say?
I'm hoping. We haven't heard a lot from her during this episode, and you seem like a skeptic.
I am.
So,
What would you say to me, Stomping Jen?
Yeah. What can we say to you? Is there anything we can say to you to change your mind? I'm not trying to. By the we, I mean Spirit Hunter from Berkshire Ghost Detectives. Is there anything you could hear that might change your mind?
No. I don't think there's anything you can hear. It's just if you experience something.
Yes.
Okay.
So unless I come across something that...
Mm-hmm. No, I completely understand. And just know if you do, we're here to help.
Thank you.
All right.
I know who to call.
Who are you going to call, Stomping Jen? Who?
Berkshire Ghost Detectives, of course.
All right. Well,
Spirit Hunter is here for you.
Spirit Hunter. I want to say something. I learned a lot from speaking with you. Thanks for talking to me. And I apologize for my breakdown earlier when I was talking about the Ouija board my mother gave me. And maybe I shouldn't apologize, right? Because this is an emotional topic. I think if me sharing that story could help anybody, and my dearly departed uncle, sorry, didn't get a chance to live a long life, telling the story of how he got bit by a rabid fox and they turned the hip bone of that fox into a Ouija board planchette. If telling that story could help anybody, I'm glad I did it. I'm very glad I did it.
Okay.
And thank you, Spirit Hunter, for providing guidance here and helping me get that story out. It's the first time I've told that story publicly.
Well, I'm glad to have been of assistance to you.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have been able to tell the story without your calm, reassuring manner. Like, I felt like I was in good hands here. So what I'm telling people who are listening to this, if you're bedeviled by ghosts, if you're plagued by demons, if you're being harassed by poltergeists, get in contact with Berkshire Ghost Detectives. Okay, Spirit Hunter and his team are there to help. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you, Spirit Hunter.
Yes, thank you for speaking.
Thank you for having me this evening.
Now, one thing I will say, I just want to warn people, is that Spirit Hunter and Berkshire Ghost Detectives do not maintain a very public social media presence. They are difficult to find and get into contact with. So what I will say to people, though, is if you are looking for them, you've got to look in the right places. You've got to dig deep, right? That's how I got in contact with Spirit Hunter and Berkshire Ghost Detectives, right? I don't recommend this to anyone, okay? But I had to go onto the dark web to find their contact information. Now, Spirit Hunter, I'm not asking you to defend these sort of roundabout, more difficult ways to get in touch with Berkshire Ghost Detectives, but what I will say is, for me, kind of the process in and of itself tested me, and I knew going through it I was committed to working with you and your team and getting this interview set up. So what I'll say for people is just, you'll find them if you look, okay? Berkshire Ghost Detectives. And finally, we just want to say thank you again for joining us. To our fans, what can I say? You're a constant source of inspiration for us here at the Soft Serve Podcast, a source of creativity, a source of love. We are fed by your love. We are fed by your downloads, which have been phenomenal lately. Those downloads are a form of love. Wouldn't you say, Stomping Jen?
Yep. Definitely.
What else, Stomping Jen? Anything else we want to say?
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask. If you're not, if this is the first time you're listening to this, please subscribe to our podcast. Okay? Tell a friend about it. Leave a review.
Yep.
How could you not leave a review after hearing this episode? You know, I don't frequently, it's been a long time since I've laid myself bare like this on the podcast, and you could reward us by subscribing and downloading episodes, okay?
Okay.
All right. Spirit Hunter, thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Stomping
again for
Jen.
having me.
Stomping Jen, thank you. Thank you for diving into this experience. I mean it. I mean, the way you engaged, the way you sat there and raptly listened, and I just, as I look at you when I record, you're a constant source of moral support, a rock. You are the cornerstone of the Soft Serve Podcast.
I thank you.
Okay, so again, thank you. And finally, to our listeners, we love you. Wear a mask, be safe, and finally,
Bye now.
how many finallys can we have,
I
Stomping
don't
Jen?
know.
All right. Thank you, Spirit Hunter and Berkshire Ghost Detectives.
Bye
To our
now.
fans, we love you. Bye now.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed